Hello there everybody, it's Mark here checking in at Ditching a Drink. This video is going to be a story of an alcoholic. So from when I first picked up alcohol, all the bits in between, and when I stopped alcohol, and what my life is like now. So I started drinking when I was a teenager. I remember my first drink actually, it was in a pub, aged 18. My first pint was a pint of Carling, of all things, absolute horrible drink. And I didn't even like the taste of it, but I liked the way it made me feel. And from that very first one, I had a feeling that I could not describe. It was like an escapism for me. I weren't a very confident person, so alcohol was like very fitting for me. And as soon as I put a drink inside me, it just changed me. It changed my persona, it changed my personality, it gave me confidence, and it just lit me up. I just loved the way it made me feel, away from that normal standard feeling of life without alcohol at the time. So I'd have my first drink and that was it really, away I went. I've never only had one drink in my life, ever. So that drink progressed onto another drink, and the first time I drank, I think I had about 8 pints, and I was very drunk, and I loved the feeling. But back then, I just used to go out a couple of nights a week, playing darts and stuff, and I only drank 2 or 3 times a week, really. Kept it in the pubs and stuff. And I thought, well, I'm in pubs drinking, so I haven't got a problem, you know what I mean? I don't take it home, I don't drink at home, don't drink anywhere else apart from in a pub or club or wherever I'm playing, or whether I'm out with my mates, going to clubbing or whatever. So it was quite manageable then, and I kept down my job quite well, and just got on with normal life. And as the years progressed, the quantity of alcohol also progressed, where I was only have like 6 to 8 pints a night. I was now going into like double figures a few years down the line, and my tolerance to alcohol was growing and growing, and I was needing more and more to get me through, to that feeling I needed to get to, just to feel normal. I didn't feel normal unless I got to that oblivion stage, or on the borderline. So life being sober in the end was not normal. I had to be drunk to feel normal, and it's a weird place to be, and I didn't want to be in that way. I always had to keep drinking alcohol, and I knew that if I can just put this liquid inside me and I just swallow it and drink it, I feel different and better. And I did, and it worked for quite a long time. Don't get me wrong, I had some absolute brilliant times with a drink with my mates over the years, and times I'd never forget, and a lot of good memories. But the last couple of years were not so. I couldn't function in life. It was hard to get by, I wasn't only just drinking in pubs anymore. I was taking bottles home and taking bottles of spirits home. And I was drinking behind the door, in the flat I was in at the time. And I'd lost all control, I'd always make up these rules to myself, if you like. I'd never drink at home. I'd never drink in the morning. Never drink on the job. All these little rules you make to yourself. Whereas, in your own head, if you go, as long as I don't break those rules, I haven't got a problem. But those rules are starting to get broken. I made the cardinal sin of bringing a drink back home one night. It was last orders at a pub, 11, 12 o'clock, and I weren't at that point, and I hadn't had enough. So I went to the garage or wherever I went to get a bottle of vodka, and I'd never drank vodka at home in my life, but, that just took me onto a whole new pain of drinking, what I'd never imagined, and I think that bottle of vodka was a turning point in my drinking, really, and it all went downhill from there, because I was drinking that bottle of vodka and I wasn't stopping that bottle of vodka till it had gone. And as much as I wanted to put it down, there was no chance of me doing so. And the realisation had hit that, I am dependent upon alcohol and I need it to live. And it was a very, very worrying time for me, because, if I were to just stop, that'd be more dangerous than just drinking, if you like. So I was at this point in life where I didn't know where to go and I didn't know what to do about it, really. I'd wake up on the morning to a bottle of vodka what were left from the night before if I were lucky. If not, I'll be running to the shop to get another one, taking lid off, getting it down me as quick as possible. That's just to get onto that normality, you know, where people would wake up and have their breakfast in the morning, a couple of slices of toast and a coffee. I would take the head off of a bottle of vodka, you know, and that was just normal. I needed that to feel normal. And I wouldn't even get drunk, you know, till towards the end, because my tolerance had grew that much. I was quite good at just keeping it down and acting quite normal with a drink, but deep down and in my head and in my body, I was dying, and I didn't know what to do, you know. It's a very, very lonely illness, alcoholism, being an alcoholic, because, you know, you try and keep it to yourself best you can, because you don't want anyone knowing that you've got a drink problem and that you drink you drink all hours of the day, any day, every day. So you do your best to try and keep it under wraps, really, and hide it. And I did quite a good job of that for years, you know. I'd put different bottles in different bins and stuff like that, and, you know, I was an absolute embarrassment to myself, and I didn't want anybody whatsoever to know the amounts I was consuming. So I kept it very, very, very under wraps for a lot of years. And, you know, when I finally got help towards the end, it was like a lifesaver, really, because, you know, I'd had enough with the life in the end. You know, my life would just consist of get up, drink, blackout, get up, drink, blackout, get up, drink, blackout. It was a never-ending cycle, you know. The only way the cycle were going to end was with a death, which felt like a very good idea at the time, or with recovery, which I didn't even know was a possible solution until here I am now. So there was only two options, really, for me in the end. It was either die and, you know, die of an alcoholic death or commit suicide, or go and get well. They were the two honest options in my life at that point. That was it. There was no other avenue to go down. So luckily for me, you know, I got well and chosen the better route out, and I'm glad I did so. So how did I get down the route of drinking for 10 years and then stopping for over 4 years now? So in September 2021, one evening I decided, you know, I looked in the mirror and I thought, you're an absolute disgrace, Mark, what have you become? You know, I had hopes and dreams, and, you know, I was a young lad and I was just an absolute mess. I was stuck behind this door in a flat I didn't want to be in. Consigned to a life of drinking vodka to function. All my mates had pissed off, and, you know, the reality was I was just an out and out fucking bum and drunk, really, and I didn't really want to live in life because there was nothing to look forward to. You know, the only thing I was looking into and looking down to were a bottle of vodka, and that was it. So I'd had enough, and, you know, I was content that this was it. I'm going to end my life, you know, and I'm making a real deal of it this time, and this is it. You know, I'm gonna go out, my head held high, and go, you know, life weren't for me, thank you very much, and see you later. I rang a friend that night and told him, you know, I can't remember this call, to be honest. I said, look, I'm in a bad way, I can't stop drinking. You know, I think life is done for me now, and that's it. It's time for me to go and take the easy route and see you later. And I don't remember that call whatsoever, but luckily he saved my life that night, that friend. And he called an ambulance with your police, and they come to me flat and took the door off, and they just see me lay there, you know, like cabbaged out, really, and bottles around me, cigarette packets, and my life was a mess, you know. I'd lost all control, respect, morals, everything, you know. I'd given up, you know. I just wanted to die in the end. But you know, they rushed me off to hospital and took me through the detox, and I did 2 weeks in a drying out place there, Greater Manchester, where they dried me out for 2 weeks, and my God, was it a rocky 2 weeks of my life, but it worked. You know, the first 3 days in there was just horrific. You know, I was sweating buckets and shaking, scared. I felt like a little boy, you know. All I wanted was a drink to feel that normality I was going on about. But I knew that I'd only got one chance at this, you know. And I don't get this opportunity every day of the week, so I put everything into it, you know, all my efforts. And I listened to everything, every group session, every recovery route, every story, every ounce I wanted just to get a break from this drinking and to live like a normal person. And I did that 2 weeks, and I got given a certificate to say that you'd completed the detox here. And you know, and I thought I'd fucking won the lottery. You know, I'd never done 2 weeks in my life without drinking from when I first picked up one, and it was a feeling I cannot imagine, or sorry, I cannot describe that feeling of accomplishment, that I've finally broken the shackles with this alcohol stuff, and that I can do 2 weeks. And that gave me motivation. Then I thought, right, if I can get 2 weeks, I can get to a month. And if I can get a month, I can do 12 of them. I've done a year. And that was what it was like in my head. And it was like a game then. It was like a challenge. So, you know, the best thing whatever happened to me was AA coming into that building when I was drying out for 2 weeks. And I went to an AA meeting when I come out back home every night for about 6 months, relentlessly, whether it was raining, snowing, sun. You know, I made a lot of sacrifices to get to meetings, because I knew without meetings I wouldn't have a life to live. You know, it was life or death. It was either attend these meetings and get well and do it properly, or die. And I didn't want to die, you know. In the end, I wanted to die, but then I got 2 weeks and it gave me a bit of hope again, and I just carried on and on and on. And I did a meeting every week, a meeting every day, sometimes 2 a day. I'd do one in the morning, and then I'd go one in the evening. You know, I'd do that every single day. And it, you know, it was relentless, and I put a lot of time and effort into meetings, you know, they're an hour and a half. But if I can pay an hour and a half a day to get 24 hours of sobriety and lovely life, that's a deal. That's a fair deal for me, you know, and I pay that price every single day of the week. And I still do a lot of meetings now, even 4 years down the line, you know. I try to help people as much as I can with my story, and have people reaching out and wanting to get sober, because it feels like it's a bit of a trendy thing to do at the moment. You know, people stopping drinking and realising that there is a life away from nightlife and drinking, and you can live a happy, fulfilling life without a drink, and it's possible. You know, I've done some things in the last 4 years what I can't imagine of doing. I've been some places I couldn't imagine seeing. I've done things I'd never imagined doing. I've been happy. I've been sad. I've had death. I've had all sorts, but I've never ever once needed a drink to get through it, and that is a blessing. And that just proves to me that not only I can get sober and get well, and you know, be recovered from this thing called alcoholism. Any one of you guys can, whether what stage you're at in the drink. You know, it's never too late. Just makes a decision and put some willpower and some effort into it, and before you know it, you know, you get a couple of weeks in and you get a month in, and then withdrawals go, and then that's it. Then you're on your way, and then you got a life absolutely worth living, and then you can just build on it and build on it and build on it, get everything back you lost, and just start a whole new life. You know, I am a totally different person to the person that first picked up a drink 10 years ago. The only thing that remains the same about me from 10 years ago is my name and my personality. The rest has all been swapped and changed and fiddled about with, and I'm now at a stage of my life where I'm quite content and happy, and I can be around alcohol safely, where, you know, I don't have the urge to go pick it up. You know, I go out with my mates often and they're drinking and whatever, and it doesn't bother me, you know, because I know that I'm recovered and will never pick up a drink again, hopefully, one day at a time. And that is a true blessing and a real milestone to where I come from, and I just love it, you know. And for me to pick up a drink now would be insanity, you know, 4 years down the line later on. You know, I've done 4 years of life without a drink, or even ingesting a drink or any kind. So for me to drink now would be absolute insanity, and I don't want to do that. So this is just a bit of a video for a bit of hope for you guys. You know, if you're struggling and you want to reach out and you want to take this path, and you're more than happy to give me a contact and we can have a chat. You know, and I hope you guys get well and stay well. And I hope you all have a nice Christmas. And sorry for not making any videos on this channel very often, but here's another one. So yeah, thank you and peace out.